Good evening. I'm delighted and honoured to introduce the second programme of Addressing the Nations, with speeches and addresses by some of Ireland's finest artists, be they theatre makers, composers, writers or visual artists. The Department of Foreign Affairs is proud to be a core funder of the Centre Culturel Irlandais in Paris, alongside Culture Ireland. As a member of the board, I'm honoured to contribute to the future development of the CCI as outlined in its new strategic plan, which was launched this week. The CCI has established itself as a pioneer for excellence in terms of its artistic programming and the opportunities it creates and offers for Irish artists. The team, led by the director, Nora McShilley, brings an enthusiasm, wisdom and passion to their work, creating relationships with French and European cultural institutions on behalf of the Irish arts sector and Irish artists. The Centre Culturel Irlandais has curated Addressing the Nations to give artists a platform to articulate and express their current preoccupations, reflections, priorities and aspirations. The invited artists for the second programme of addresses consider the speeches and language of 2020, the new words that have entered our collective vocabulary, the role of our frontline and care workers, and the contribution made by our artists. They consider the simple act of breathing and the threat and the danger it now poses. They remind us of the preciousness of time and of the need to move forwards courageously and to learn from the lessons of 2020. One of our priorities at the Embassy in Paris is to showcase Irish culture and Ireland's creative talent to France and to the world. We work hand in hand with the CCI in this mission, and it gives us immense pride to introduce new audiences to the work of gifted Irish artists like those who join us today. Whether at the Embassy or at one of the CCI's fantastic exhibitions or events, I really look forward to seeing you all as soon as this is possible. In the meantime, I encourage you all to continue doing what you do best. I'm confident that the world will emerge from this crisis with a deeper appreciation for the arts and a hunger for cultural events. On this hopeful and optimistic note, I wish you a very enjoyable evening in the company of these outstanding artists. Thank you.
This evening, all across Europe, the threat is growing. We are in a very dangerous place. We sail between Scylla and Charybdis. 2020 was a tapestry of sorrow, suffering, and loss. There have been many ups and downs. Every aspect of social, economic, and cultural life has been upended. We are still in the tunnel, and we have some distance to go. As an artist, I know the value of repetition. Give the best advice, and then give it again, and keep repeating it until it becomes second nature. Our plan is working, and we should stick to it. The declines in output are without parallel in living memory. On the upside, we have not been shut out of the money markets. But there is no such thing as free money. It is an inescapable reality that there will be a cost from these measures, and that cost will have to be addressed. We are a resilient people, and this too will pass. There are no easy answers. It can be done, but it won't be easy. Although the cost of these measures will be high, we are prepared to pay the price. We can bear it, and we will be able to pay it back as a nation. With the right policies, the recovery will be quicker this time. As well as being an artist, I am also a father, a husband, a brother, a sports fan, someone who likes a pint with my friends. I don't have all the answers, but I'm thinking about them every day, and I know other artists are as well. The truth is that these are extraordinary times. We have a little way to go, and we should not lose hope now. Desperate times do not call for desperate measures. Better times are yet to come. Gur maith agaibh.
Near the end of 2020, dictionaries around the world announced their word of the year. Pandemic, doom scrolling, lockdown. Many new words have entered the language. Elbow bump, contact tracing, bubble, quarantini. I've used them all myself, but the one I've noticed most is care. Healthcare, care home, childcare, care worker, caregiver. In the fast-paced individualism of our late capitalist moment, our governments and workplaces do not tend to use the language of care. Yet all of us have had to adapt to new forms of caretaking over the past year, for ourselves, our families and our communities. From hand-washing and tending to the young, sick and vulnerable, to taking time for the practices we value most, each of us have been practicing care. Caring for some has been accompanied by griefs, lost loved ones, lost health, lost income, lost freedoms, lost work, and lost contact, where contact means touch. There is a cost to care. Class, ethnicity, and gender shape it. Worrying research indicates that the burden of childcare has fallen disproportionately on women, in a pattern that turns the clock back on equality and has longer-term implications for the workplace. Of course, there are always exceptions to the trend. Amazing fathers caring for their kids. In our home, it was my partner, Beth, who did the bulk of childcare for our toddler. When the pandemic hit, we shared Finn's care equally, and totally for many months when daycare closed. I had to suspend the hopes and expectations I had for my work and my writing, and reorientate myself to caring for Finn. I had been reading Lucretius on the nature of things, and suddenly my days were filled with Meg and Mog and Room on the Broom. I swapped sonnets and spreadsheets for building forts, ignored my mounting inbox for living room picnics, munching fruit made of felt. It was brilliant and demanding and precious and exhausting. And somehow, in the midst of toddler play, I read Weather, Jenny Offal's excellent novel about living in the climate emergency we find ourselves in. In an interview for the Paris Review, Offal was asked about her preoccupation with the question of how to live during times of crisis. She said, "Caring is all we have. Cynicism is just a soft form of denial." I sign off email differently now. It happened during the first lockdown in March. No more best wishes or regards. Now I write, "Take care." I remember noticing this phrase above my name and contact information at the university where I'm employed, and asking myself whether it was a professional sign-off. What a thing to wonder about during a global pandemic. Caring is all we have. Cynicism is just a soft form of denial. Take care.
Is there anything that can be salvaged from this terrible time? So many of us have suffered and continue to suffer. So many of us have lost friends and family, colleagues, neighbours, jobs, security, days in school, days out. Some people haven't had the touch of another human being for months. No hugs, no kisses, no human warmth. Is there anything that can be salvaged from this terrible time? One thing for me, just one thing, and it's the acknowledgement and the realisation of who keeps us going, who's important, who do we rely on when the chips are down, who do we look to for solace, and who do we count on for care? It's not the people that are usually at the top of the pile, the jobs that come with status and recognition, high salaries and big houses. In a world when we're down to the wire, we realise that what matters is food and shelter, nurses and carers, people in low-paid jobs, someone that looks after our elderly when we can't be there, someone that puts food on the shelves in the supermarket, someone that keeps us clean, takes our rubbish, delivers our fuel, keeps the lights on. Now, in this time, we clap for carers, we praise the people turning up for their shift on the tills, for people wiping door handles and mopping floors. We say how grateful we are that frontline workers, delivery drivers, street cleaners are still out there when many of us are too afraid to leave our homes. When nurses are holding the hands of people taking their last breath, giving comfort to complete strangers in that most profound moment. One day, this terrible time will be over. Let's remember then those people and how much we relied on them, counted on them, needed them, and accord to those jobs and those people the dignity they deserve and the wages they deserve and the holiday pay they deserve and the respect that they deserve. If there is anything that can be salvaged from this terrible time, it's fair pay, better conditions, and respect for the workers of the world. Thank you.
In times of tumult, the role of the artist has many facets. As the rock stars of medicine and science in our community race to heal our bodies, we, the artists, are left with the task of the care and good feeding of the human spirit. Our job is to absorb, assimilate, internalize, process, interpret, and give voice to what we're seeing, hearing, and feeling around us. At our best, we give voice to those who have none and create a safe space for people to place their emotions and to understand that they are not alone, not crazy. I feel it too. Another of our roles is to make meaning of what's happening around us. and to take something of value from it so that nothing is ever a waste. One of the things we as musicians have learned about throughout this past year is that something very, very simple that is innate in human nature and a very, very important part of our job can be taken away so easily from us. In classical music, when musicians play together, we call it an ensemble. How many people are in the ensemble? What instruments are in the ensemble? The word ensemble, of course, means together in French. A simple thing of being together became so complex and so absent from our lives. So much of what happens in an ensemble is non-verbal. It's the unspoken, it's the unsaid, it's the felt breath, it's the interpretation of another's movement when they're next to you. This is something that can only happen when we are together as human beings. And it's a metaphor for being together in our communities, being together in our families. But for us, we can't even make music unless we're together. In 2021, my wish for all of us is something so simple and yet so complex to achieve. My wish is that by the end of 2021, we can all safely be the hele ensemble together.
There have always been unprecedented times. There have always been times that have tested our resilience as a people. This past year has really brought the reality of curtailment to everyone's lives. The reality of restriction, the reality of incapacitation and isolation. We've all learned to live to the point of tears during this time. The virus has touched everyone in one way or another. The word touch being a word that we must all now consider. We have never before been so aware of the power of touch and how touch itself is the weapon and how we must protect each other by covering up, by avoiding provocation of this disease, by avoiding contact, isolating, staying housebound. Today I speak of those who have been missing from this COVID conversation. For in lots of ways, it has not been an equal pandemic. There has been some sensible advice to stay at home and to limit contact with the outside world. This is, of course, the correct way to limit the spread of a new virus. However, it has been a disaster for the spread of another. For really, there have been two plagues on our houses. There is the COVID plague, of course, but there is another plague. A plague of pushing things aside and out of the way and unseeing things and it's not my place to say. There is another virus that infects our home, making them very dangerous places, predominantly for women and children to be in. The frontline workers of domestic violence support services in Ireland have vocalised a dramatic spike in the rise of women seeking their services, with over 3,500 new calls to these charities in the first quarter of 2020. Through the lens of a pandemic, we should now look at a universal action to limit the spread of partner-on-partner violence, coercive control and manipulation. We must be vigilant, we must flatten this curve, and we must extend the hand to support those in these situations, not to look the other way. There is no vaccine to stop this type of disease. There is only action. Silence is the most contaminating factor, and to stay silent increases the spread and forces us to live with this plague for generations to come.
One, 2, 3, 4. I'm breathing in. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm breathing out. Breathing you in, dangerous. Breathing me out, threatening. I've been breathing. You've been waiting. We've been counting. Nothing happened. Twice. I'm in the now with triple vision. Thinking about then, worrying about next. I'm in an unmoored dream time. Emancipated from the practical, I can dream of what might be when we can breathe the same air. I'm breathing. The clock is ticking. I'm backwards and forwards. 1, 2, 3. I'm remembering what my mother smells like. I'm hearing the birds outside my window. I'm bursting for togetherness. Nothing happened. Twice. Everything happened 3 times. Decoupled from the astrological clock, I'm remembering. I'm breathing. I'm wondering when we can breathe the same air. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 6, 7, 8.
Our time is precious. Thanks for choosing to spend these few minutes to listen to these thoughts today. There is hope that we are coming to the end of the pandemic time, hope that we can soon get back to normal. But what kind of normal are we going to go back to? The kind of normal where we're burnt out, run down, rushed off our feet. The kind of normal where we're travelling and consuming in ways that are unsustainable for ourselves and for the planet. The kind of normal where time is something to be filled, used up, exhausted, like the other natural resources we treat in the same way. I won't deny that things have been hard since we went first into lockdown, but I must admit I don't regret the interruption entirely. I don't regret the daily walks. I don't regret the books I read. I don't regret the chance to stop. Maybe the rare gift of the pandemic year has been one of unexpected time. Brian Dillon writes that what we persist in calling time is only the evidence of movement in space, inscribed in the world around us in so many useful, exhilarating ways. As we look back on these strange days, maybe we can start to notice the evidence of the time we've been offered inscribed in the world. Unanticipated artworks inscribing the experience of the time into physical and digital space. Protest movements catching hold of the time to inscribe change on the world. Traces of nature inscribing their ways back into our city lives. As we emerge from the pandemic, let's make sure to hang on to this time. Let's not rush to fill it up all over again. Time vacant isn't time wasted. And let's make sure everyone can have access to time. Let's fight for ideas like universal basic income so people can choose to use their time to inscribe what really matters to them on the world. Let's take the time to stroke a cat, or look at the sky, or call someone to see how they're doing. We will dance again, and travel again, and sing again, and gather again, but maybe more slowly this time. Let's find a better normal, not just a new normal. Let's go forward, not back.
My favorite writer from the old country, Dubravka Ugrašić, wrote recently, "With every new year that rolls around, people have started wishing each other happy new year." In March 2020, I thought this ain't my first rodeo. I already spent a couple of years of my life living in a dark, damp basement without running water or electricity, using old newspaper instead of toilet paper, being bombed on daily basis. What can a little virus do? I'm a warrior, a survivor. This is a kid's game in comparison. What I did not account for is the lack of human touch. In the war, we were able to huddle together, hold each other tight, cry, and salivate all over your friends and family, even strangers. Not this time around. This time we were warned to stay apart. Other people were suspect. I remember meeting a friend during the first lockdown in a park. She was distressed, crying, shaking, and me standing like a scarecrow 6 feet away, feeling helpless. All she needed was a hug. I never understood how much power is encapsulated in a simple embrace. Two hearts facing each other close. Touch is the first of the senses that develops in a human infant. The right kind of touch has an ability to soothe the nervous system, to lower the levels of cortisol, and increase all kinds of happy-inducing chemicals in your body. More you are touched as an infant, the more resilient to stress you will become. Touch boosts the immune system. We are wired to connect to other people in this very basic physical form. To touch is to give life, Michelangelo said. Second lockdown felt darker. My world constricted. I started to experience daily anxiety attacks. No amount of meditation and breathing exercises could pull me out. In the midst of a panic fog, I met another friend in the same park. And she, seeing me there, all small and broken, said, "Oh, fuck it," and hugged me. I felt my shoulders drop for the first time in months, and I started to cry and let it all out. I have been fine since then.
Toll. It's easy to talk about what I don't want. Climate catastrophe, climate injustice, poor people and people of colour dying disproportionately from COVID, that 20% lockdown-related increase in domestic violence, Trump, in again in 2024, a hard border, Brexit, the Amazon gone, live music and theatre dying. I don't want theatre to die. I don't want half the species on our planet extinct by 2030 while the billionaires double. I don't want to see 17 million mink killed, then shoddily buried, only to resurface like decomposing furry little zombies, just because some of them had COVID. I don't want 17 million mink killed for fur coats. I want the Danes and the French and us to do better than mink farms. It's easy to feel powerless. I live in Dublin 8, worst pollution in the capital, apparently. Our neighbourhood is sandwiched between two motorways, so you can use it as a rat run to get between them without paying the tolls. People in polluted areas are more likely to contract COVID. Our street was among the first in Dublin to have an infection reported. In April alone, I went out twice to my doorstep for pandemic funerals. Think clapping, think cortege. Think New Orleans, only without the dancing. People call COVID an enemy or a mugger. It's a virus. It doesn't do hate or theft, though it does thrive off our unequal human structures in the way that they have been mugging the planet. Dermot around the corner died in September, I think. I saw all his stuff piled up in his front garden waiting for his skip, and when I asked his daughter how he was, she cried. I don't know if it was COVID. He wasn't rich. Dermot used to love winding me up. Last time it was all about the council spraying herbicide on the weeds. I said something snippy about the bees, and I flounced off. When I saw his ripped up lino in his front garden, and no sign of his lovely dog Molly, I wanted that conversation back. It's possible to change things, just not death. Last year, a transport plan for Dublin proposed cutting down our local plane trees. Plane trees are brilliant at soaking up pollution. Bus lanes, said the plan, but I saw faster rat runs. I wrote a letter. Then I had a Damascene moment, and I cut down my driving instead. Now I cycle everywhere. A toll of sorts. It's worth paying. People say the vaccine will break COVID. What will break our unequal human structures? Breed Smith, the independent who initiated the climate bill, is one of our local TDs. I voted for her, number 1. I have no idea who Dermot voted for. Dig under your don't wants. Find your wants. Fall off that horse at Damascus and see where you can change. And if you can, if you're willing, pay whatever toll you can afford.
I met Promise early in 2020. He was living in a small emergency accommodation centre around the corner from me here in rural County Meath. A dynamic, generous, joyful man, obviously running from one life to another. I couldn't help but be struck at the time by his dignity and that of his fellow refugees, and of the profundity of a group of people simply trying to exist in a world that will not promise to accommodate them. I don't think I have ever been as aware of my privilege as an Irish citizen, or indeed of my deep confidence of my place in the world, until I met Promise. And then COVID hit, and I too found myself without agency. I too found myself existing at the behest of some unknown force that brings with it unknown rules that now totally govern my world. Like Promise, I can no longer travel any distance. I can no longer plan ahead. I have to wait indefinitely for a future that I have no influence over. It's been a deeply humbling and disturbed experience, but I've no doubt that there's a lesson in it. So what do I miss as a result of COVID-19? A pint of Guinness poured directly from the tap and left to settle on the cracked old counter at my local. Chat filling the corners. Contagious, raucous laughter. Sun in my bones. Sitting on a terrace in France. A hug from my brother. Theatre, oh my God, theatre. And live music. And the vivid peace of a gallery. Trotting around town. A heaving crowd. People watching and friends. I dearly, dearly miss my friends. Particularly those that live far away. As my teenage daughter said to me one day in spring, Jesus, Mum, we had everything. And now I wonder what Promise missed. Who Promise missed? But I can't ask Promise, because Promise was moved on from Meath during lockdown. Moved, in fairness, to a place that was considered safer, more isolated during this worldwide pandemic. And I have no doubt that Promise took the move well, with a sanguine acceptance and real optimism as to the possibilities of his future. Is that the lesson in COVID? One of the lessons, I wonder, in this COVID. That I not take my freedoms, my friendships, or my luck in living at this time of unparalleled peace in Ireland for granted. That the world is gracious. The world is generous, and life, every life is precious. It's only we that get in the way. The only way to surmount COVID-19 is to come together and to promise to love, to protect each and every one of us. Thank you.